The alarm goes off. You open your eyes, and the first feeling is heaviness. Your body stayed in bed for 8 hours, maybe even 9, yet somehow you wake up feeling like the night never happened. Your head feels slow. Your motivation is missing. And the strange thing is, you know people who sleep less than you and still seem full of energy in the morning. I've felt that confusion myself. Lying there staring at the ceiling, wondering how it's possible to spend so many hours asleep and still feel tired when the day begins. Psychologist William C. Dement, one of the pioneers of sleep research, once wrote in The Promise of Sleep, "You are not defined by how much sleep you get, but by how well you sleep." That simple idea quietly changes everything. Maybe the real issue isn't the number of hours we spend in bed. Maybe the real question is deeper than that. What if the difference between waking up drained and waking up refreshed has less to do with time and more to do with what the mind is doing while we sleep? So the puzzle begins here. If sleeping longer should make us feel better, why do so many people still wake up exhausted after a full night in bed? Part of the answer lies in something most of us rarely notice: the difference between time spent asleep and quality of sleep. You can lie in bed for 9 hours, but if your mind is restless, processing unfinished conversations, replaying awkward moments, worrying about tomorrow, your brain is never fully resting. Think about a typical evening. You check your phone one last time. A message reminds you of something stressful at work. A social media post sparks comparison. Suddenly your mind is quietly activated again. Your body may be lying still in the dark, but your brain is still working. Psychologist Matthew Walker explains this clearly in his book Why We Sleep. The shorter your sleep, the shorter your life. But he also emphasizes something equally important. Fragmented sleep robs the brain of its ability to restore itself properly. Even when the hours seem long enough, broken or shallow sleep leaves the mind unfinished. In everyday life, this often looks simple. Someone goes to bed early, but spends the last hour scrolling. Another person lies awake, replaying a conversation they had that day. Someone else falls asleep with a quiet anxiety about tomorrow's responsibilities. All of this creates a subtle mental noise that prevents sleep from becoming truly restorative. And once you begin noticing this, another realization slowly appears. Perhaps the real problem isn't how late we fall asleep, but what our mind is carrying with it into the night. Most people imagine sleep as a simple off switch. You close your eyes, the brain shuts down, and the body rests until morning. But psychologically and neurologically, sleep is far more active than that. During the night, your brain moves through repeating cycles: light sleep, deep sleep, and rapid eye movement sleep. Each stage serves a different role. Deep sleep restores the body and immune system. Dream sleep helps the brain reorganize memories and process emotional experiences. If these cycles are interrupted, the brain never finishes its nightly work. Matthew Walker explains in Why We Sleep, sleep is the single most effective thing we can do to reset our brain and body health each day. What matters most is not just entering sleep, but completing the cycles that allow the brain to reset. This explains something many people have quietly noticed. You may sleep 8 hours but wake up several times during the night, checking the clock, adjusting your blanket, responding to notifications. By morning, you technically slept long enough, but your brain's restoration process was constantly interrupted. Meanwhile, someone else might sleep 6 uninterrupted hours. Their mind moves smoothly through full cycles of deep sleep and dreaming. When morning comes, their brain has completed the reset it needed. This is why the clock alone can be misleading. And once you begin to see sleep as a process of emotional and neurological repair, not just physical rest, you start to realize that the real key to waking up refreshed may begin long before your head touches the pillow. And this is where something subtle but powerful begins to matter: what state your mind is in when the day ends. Many people carry the entire emotional weight of the day straight into bed. An unfinished task at work, a small disagreement with someone they care about, a lingering sense that something still needs to be solved. The body lies down, but the mind keeps pacing. You may recognize this quiet mental replay. You turn off the lights, close your eyes, and suddenly your brain begins reviewing the day like a movie. Something you said in a meeting, a message you didn't reply to, a worry about tomorrow morning. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman, in Thinking Fast and Slow, describes how the mind naturally keeps returning to unresolved problems. Our brains are designed to keep working on unfinished loops because unresolved thoughts signal potential threats or incomplete goals. In daily life, this often means that sleep becomes an extension of the day rather than the end of it. People who wake up refreshed often do something different without realizing it. Before sleep, they create some form of emotional closure. It might be writing a short list of tomorrow's tasks, saying a quiet prayer, journaling, or simply taking a few minutes to mentally release the day. These small rituals send a powerful signal to the brain: the day is complete, the problems can wait. And when the mind feels safe enough to let go, sleep begins to change, because the brain can finally move from problem solving into restoration. Most people believe morning energy is about willpower. Set the alarm. Wake up earlier. Push yourself harder. But psychology suggests something far more interesting. Your morning begins long before you open your eyes. It begins with what your brain expects from tomorrow. Think about the difference between 2 nights. On one night, you know tomorrow will bring something meaningful, a project you care about, a trip, a conversation you've been looking forward to. Even if you sleep slightly less, you often wake up with surprising energy. On another night, tomorrow feels heavy: obligations, stress, routines that feel draining. You sleep longer, yet the morning still feels difficult. Psychologist Viktor Frankl wrote in Man's Search for Meaning, "Those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how." While Frankl was writing about survival and meaning in extreme conditions, the same psychological principle quietly shapes everyday life. When the brain senses purpose or anticipation, it prepares differently. Even during sleep, your mind organizes information and emotional energy around what lies ahead. This is why people often wake up seconds before an important alarm, or feel naturally alert on days that matter to them. The brain has already prepared itself. Without meaning or anticipation, waking up feels like pushing against gravity. Which leads to another question. If purpose shapes how the brain prepares for sleep, what else in our daily environment might be quietly influencing whether we wake up drained or refreshed? Once you begin noticing how the mind prepares for sleep, another pattern becomes clear. Many people never truly end their day. The evening slowly dissolves into a blur of notifications, messages, short videos, and half-finished thoughts. You tell yourself you'll check one last thing before bed. 10 minutes later, you are still scrolling. Your body may be getting tired, but your mind remains alert, reacting to new information again and again. Psychologically, this keeps the brain in what researchers call a state of cognitive arousal. The mind stays slightly vigilant, as if it must remain ready for the next piece of information. Sleep researcher Matthew Walker explains in Why We Sleep that exposure to stimulating information and light late at night delays the brain's ability to transition into deep sleep. Even when you fall asleep, the nervous system may remain partially activated. You can see this in small everyday moments. Someone checks email right before bed and suddenly starts thinking about tomorrow's workload. Another person reads stressful news and carries a quiet tension into the night. These moments seem harmless, yet they extend the psychological day far into the night. People who wake up refreshed often create invisible boundaries. They stop engaging with the outside world earlier than others. The phone goes down. The mind slows. The evening becomes quieter. These boundaries are not strict rules but signals, gentle messages telling the brain that stimulation is ending and restoration is beginning. And when the mind receives those signals consistently, something even more powerful begins to happen. The brain starts learning when it is safe to rest. The human brain loves rhythm. When sleep happens at wildly different times each night, the brain must constantly readjust. One night you sleep at midnight, another at 2 a.m., another much earlier. Each shift forces the body's internal clock to recalibrate. Over time, this uncertainty weakens the brain's ability to enter deep sleep quickly. Psychologist and sleep researcher Russell Foster from the University of Oxford has often emphasized that our bodies operate on an internal biological clock called the circadian rhythm. This rhythm regulates sleep, hormones, body temperature, and alertness throughout the day. When sleep patterns are consistent, the brain gradually becomes efficient at entering restorative sleep. It learns when deep sleep should begin and when the body should prepare to wake. In everyday life, you can notice this effect easily. Think about someone who wakes up at nearly the same time every morning, even on weekends. Often they wake up naturally before the alarm. Their body has already learned the rhythm. In contrast, irregular sleep schedules force the brain into constant adjustment, like resetting a clock every night. Over time, consistency allows the brain to complete its recovery cycles faster and more smoothly. The result is surprising. People may sleep slightly fewer hours but still wake up feeling clearer and more restored. And as the brain learns this rhythm, another deeper shift quietly begins, not just in behavior, but in how a person sees themselves. As these patterns settle into daily life, something interesting begins to happen. What first looked like discipline slowly becomes identity. Many people try to force better mornings through rules. They download productivity apps, set multiple alarms, promise themselves they will try harder tomorrow. For a few days it works. Then the old pattern quietly returns. The reason is simple: behavior that fights against identity rarely lasts. Psychologist James Clear writes in Atomic Habits, "Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become." Over time, repeated actions shape how we see ourselves, and that identity begins guiding our behavior almost automatically. Think about someone who genuinely sees themselves as a person who values clarity and energy. Their evenings naturally begin to slow earlier. They close the day more intentionally. They protect their sleep the same way someone else protects an important meeting. Not because they are forcing themselves, because it feels consistent with who they believe they are. You can see this in small moments. One person stays up scrolling even when tired because sleep feels optional. Another person quietly closes the laptop and prepares for bed because they see rest as part of living well. The difference isn't willpower, it's identity shaping behavior. And when waking up refreshed becomes part of how someone sees themselves, sleep begins to support that identity instead of fighting against it. So the real mystery from the beginning starts to resolve itself. It was never simply about 8 hours versus 6. The difference between waking up exhausted and waking up fresh often comes from something quieter: the relationship between your mind, your habits, and the rhythm of your life. When the day ends with emotional closure, the mind stops carrying unfinished noise into the night. When boundaries protect the evening, the brain finally relaxes. When sleep follows a steady rhythm, the body learns when to restore itself. And when a person begins to see rest as part of who they are, sleep becomes deeper instead of longer. The clock matters, of course, but psychology reminds us that time alone cannot create true rest. Sometimes the secret to sleeping less yet waking up fresh is not forcing the body to rest longer. It is finally allowing the mind to rest well.